We have a little segment here that we call myth busting. And so if the two of you would be willing to participate in this, please tell us something that everybody thinks is true, but you believe not to be true, and you have some data that could help back that up. So who wants to take a first snap at that?
Go ahead.
Well, we've been talking about climate change. I'm not going to talk about climate change myths. The one that hits me in my field of looking at religion and the environment is, for some reason, and this is particularly true among academics who study the environment, the myth is that people who are Bible believers, people who come from a Western biblical tradition, don't care as much about the environment because it says in Genesis that we're supposed to have dominion over the earth. Mm-hmm. And that suggests that we should kind of be able to do as we please, and nobody should tell us to do otherwise. That is a myth. I think it's always sort of ironic. The place where you find people worried about that tends to be only in the environmental literature, whereas if you go out and look at communities of faith, statements from different denominations, what preachers tend to say, books and literature within the theological corpus, you find a very high level of concern for God's creation. You find almost universal recognition that God made this world sure for us, but therefore we have a responsibility to take care of it, and humans are uniquely qualified to play that kind of a role, to be stewards, to be husbandmen, to use our articulate gifts to repair the world in places where it needs it. So we see across traditions actually a common ground of needing and knowing to care for creation, but people sometimes think that that's not true, particularly if you're more Bible believing.
We have a segment here about, so what keeps you up at night? And if it's about, the dog barking next door, we want to hear a policy solution to it, but it's about policy solutions to these types of things. So what keeps you up at night, Sarah?
I think what concerns me most right now in Ohio is the difficulty we have coming together with a civil discourse about this subject, and the fact that Ohio is the major producer through our use of fossil fuels of pollution, air pollution, and that, quite frankly, I think we have lots of opportunities and lots of reasons to turn that around, but they don't seem to be able to gain much ground. And I don't know, I think there are a lot of reasons for that, but I think we forget that we make things here, and that we can solve these problems.
Now, you mentioned that we make things here, we can solve these problems. You have a fair amount of professional expertise in this that we've not yet asked you about. We've asked a good doctor, but you had quite a long career in the Ohio Department of Development, doing variety. What was it you were doing over there?
Well, as the Energy Office Director, I had the opportunity to work with all segments of Ohio's population, so residential, commercial, and industrial consumers. And I learned very quickly that we have entrepreneurs and we have companies that are able to solve problems and provide jobs for folks. If you look now, I think in the early 2000s is when we began the conversation among state agencies about what would it take to help build a marketplace for wind in the state of Ohio. And now we've got a pretty high potential of creating a robust marketplace as long as the policies are there to support it. And wind energy is becoming very competitive with coal. We're finding utilities are making choices to not build new coal plants, partly because of environmental regulation, but also because of dollars and cents.
Well, last week I read in the Wall Street Journal where they're seeing now a surge of solar cell applications by regular people with no subsidies, but they're buying them because the cost has come down enough so that they, in certain areas of the country where their set cost is higher, Ohio still has relatively inexpensive electrical generation here. But in certain areas of the country, it's much higher, and people are now buying solar cells and putting them in because it makes financial sense for them.
Well, and it's happening here too.
I haven't seen that much of it yet, but you have that.
We've been involved in several different conversations with congregations in central Ohio that want to pool their resources and to pool labor resources to install solar on their facilities. So there's sort of a cooperative thing that's beginning to grow and develop.